You've been comparing two options to find your next home: a one-bedroom tiny house or a studio apartment. You've run the numbers on monthly costs. You've thought about the lifestyle. But here's the question most people forget to ask until it's too late. When it's time to sell, which one actually gives you your money back? Because I'm going to show you something in this video that genuinely surprised me when I dug into the 2026 data. One of these options can lose you 40 to 60% of its value inside of 5 years. The other one, when done right, actually appreciates. And if you pick the wrong one without knowing this, that decision could cost you tens of thousands of dollars. Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you'll know exactly which option wins on resale and the specific conditions that change everything. Before we go any further, if you're new here, welcome to Affordable Tiny Homes, where we give you real data, not hype, to help you make smart housing decisions. Hit that subscribe button and the notification bell right now. We drop research-backed content on tiny homes, alternative living, and DIY builds every single week. All right, let's get into it. Here's the scenario we're comparing. On one side, a one-bedroom tiny home. We're talking about a compact structure, typically between 250 and 500 square feet, with a separate sleeping room, either on a foundation or on wheels. On the other side, a studio apartment. One open room where your bed, couch, and kitchen all share the same space, usually between 300 and 600 square feet, that you own as a condo or co-op. Both are small. Both are affordable relative to traditional housing. And both are being marketed right now as smart moves for solo buyers, downsizers, and minimalists. But they're not equal when it comes to resale. Not even close in some situations. Let's break this down into 5 key categories. And at the end, I'll give you the straight verdict. No sugarcoating. Let's start with studio apartments, because the numbers here are actually pretty telling. Studio apartments are part of the mainstream real estate market. According to 2026 data from the Manhattan market alone, one-bedroom condos consistently outperform studios on price appreciation. But studios still traded as part of a massive, liquid market with hundreds of thousands of potential buyers. In a report from Q1 2025, studio resale prices in Manhattan saw about a 3% increase year over year. Not explosive, but positive, and in a real, functioning market with real financing options. Now, tiny homes. Here's where it gets uncomfortable. According to 2026 data from LittleHousesForSale.com, there are only an estimated 10,000 to 15,000 tiny homes in the entire United States. Compare that to over 140 million total housing units nationally. That is a niche market. A very, very niche market. And in real estate, niche markets mean fewer buyers, slower sales, and more pricing pressure on the seller. The same source reports that tiny homes typically take 3 to 6 months to sell in strong markets, and 6 to 12 months in average ones. For context, a traditional home sale in 2026 averages closer to 30 to 60 days. Round one winner, studio apartment. Hands down, bigger buyer pool, faster sales, liquid market. Let's talk about tiny homes on wheels first, because this is the most common type being marketed online. According to a 2026 analysis from LittleHousesForSale.com, tiny homes on wheels typically lose 15 to 25% of their value in the very first year. And by year 5, you're often looking at 40 to 60% below your original purchase price. Why? Because lenders treat them like RVs, not real estate. The trailer ages, the frame ages, and buyers financing a purchase through RV loans or personal loans get hit with higher interest rates, which limits how much they can pay you. Rocket Mortgage confirms this directly in their 2025 guide. Tiny houses, especially highly customized ones, are not guaranteed to increase in value and may depreciate significantly. Now, foundation-based tiny homes are a different story. But even here, the news is mixed. A foundation-based tiny home performs better than one on wheels. You can get conventional adjacent financing in some cases. Buyers have more confidence. Zoning compliance is easier. But here's the thing. According to the same 2026 research, foundation-based tiny homes rarely appreciate on their own. What actually appreciates is the land underneath them. The structure itself still tends to hold or lose value. Now let's talk about studio apartments. Studio apartments are real estate. They follow real estate market cycles. According to the Federal Housing Finance Agency's December 2025 report, U.S. home prices appreciated 1.7% year-over-year between October 2024 and October 2025. And a January 2026 CoreLogic forecast projects a 4.3% increase in home prices between November 2025 and November 2026. Historically, U.S. residential real estate has averaged about 4.21% annual appreciation going back to 1967. Studios participate in that trend. Tiny homes on wheels do not. Round 2 winner, studio apartment. Real estate appreciates. Tiny homes on wheels depreciate like RVs. Foundation-based tiny homes are in the middle. This factor is one most people don't think about when they're buying, but it completely controls who can buy from you when you want to sell. Studio apartments as condos or co-ops can be financed with conventional mortgages, FHA loans, and other standard products. That means the buyer who wants to purchase your studio can access the full pool of financing, bringing millions of qualified buyers into the picture. Tiny homes. It's a completely different world. According to Rocket Mortgage and MoneyFit's 2025 and 2026 guides, most tiny homes don't qualify for standard mortgages. Buyers typically need personal loans with higher interest rates, RV financing, or specialty lenders. That is a massive barrier. Think about what that means for resale. You're selling to a buyer who probably has to pay cash or take out a high-interest personal loan. That caps your sale price because buyers have less purchasing power. It also means fewer buyers can even qualify to purchase your tiny home in the first place. And the ones who can, they know they have leverage because you don't have a line of competing offers. Round 3 winner, studio apartment. Conventional financing opens up a massive buyer pool. Limited financing for tiny homes suppresses resale prices. Okay, I want to be genuinely honest with you here, because this channel is about giving you the real picture, not just the scary headlines. There are specific scenarios where a 1-bedroom, tiny home can actually beat a studio apartment on resale. And if you're in one of these situations, this changes your calculus completely. Scenario 1. You own the land. This is the single biggest variable in tiny home resale value. If you own the land your tiny home sits on, you dramatically improve your resale position. Why? Because land appreciates. When buyers look at your listing, they're not just buying a small structure, they're buying real property. According to LittleHousesForSale.com's 2026 resale guide, in many successful tiny home sales, buyers are effectively paying for the land first and the structure second. The land carries the value. The house is a bonus. A tiny home plus owned land in a zoning-friendly state like Texas, Colorado, or parts of the Pacific Northwest can genuinely compete with or beat a studio apartment on total ROI. Scenario 2. ADU or short-term rental strategy. A 1-bedroom, tiny home used as an accessory dwelling unit. An ADU, on a property you already own, is a completely different investment story. As an ADU, your tiny home adds measurable value to your primary property. It generates rental income while you own it. And when you sell your main home, that ADU adds to your overall property valuation. This is one scenario where the tiny home's small buyer pool problem largely disappears, because you're not selling the tiny home in isolation. You're selling the whole property, and the tiny home is a value-add feature for a much broader set of buyers. Scenario 3. Foundation-based in a high-demand, zoning-friendly market. A well-built, NOAA-certified or RVA-certified 1-bedroom, tiny home on a permanent foundation. In a market with clear zoning, established tiny home communities, and strong alternative housing demand, think parts of California, Oregon, Colorado, Florida, can hold value significantly better than a tiny home on wheels. The 2026 data from LittleHousesForSale.com confirms build quality, documentation, neutral design, and zoning compliance are the 4 factors that protect tiny home resale value most effectively. If you hit all 4, you're working with a very different asset than the average THOW parked in someone's backyard. Round 4 verdict. Conditional win for 1-bed tiny home, but only with land ownership, ADU use, or foundation placement in the right market. Without these, the studio still wins. Let me put some actual numbers on screen so you can see this clearly. Pause here if you want to screenshot this. Average entry cost, 1 bed, tiny home, THOW, $50,000 to $100,000. Studio apartment, owned, $150,000 to $500,000 plus. Ongoing fees, 1 bed, tiny home, THOW, lot rent/park fees, varies. Studio apartment, owned, HOA/condo fees, mandatory. 5-year value change. 1 bed, tiny home, THOW, minus 40% to minus 60%. Studio apartment, owned, plus 4 to 8%, market average. Buyer pool size, 1 bed, tiny home, THOW, very small/niche. Studio apartment, owned, large/mainstream. Financing options, 1 bed, tiny home, THOW, RV loans, personal loans. Studio apartment, owned, conventional mortgage, FHA. Average, days to sell. 1 bed, tiny home, THOW, 90-1, 80 plus days. Studio apartment, owned, 30 to 60 days. Land appreciated, 1 bed, tiny home, THOW, only if land is owned. Studio apartment, owned, yes, real estate. Zoning risk, 1 bed, tiny home, THOW, high in many markets. Studio apartment, owned, low, regulated use. ADU potential, 1 bed, tiny home, THOW, high. Studio apartment, owned, none. On raw entry cost, the tiny home wins. You can get into a 1-bedroom, tiny home for $50,000 to $100,000, compared to $150,000 to $500,000 or more for a studio condo in a real market. I also added ongoing fees to the table because savvy viewers always ask about this. Yes, a tiny home can have a lot of rent and park fees that vary wildly by location. And yes, owning a studio condo almost always comes with mandatory HOA or condo fees on top of your mortgage. Neither one is entirely free to hold, so make sure you're factoring those carrying costs into your total financial picture. But on everything that happens after you buy, the studio apartment has a structural advantage. It's a real estate asset in a real market with real financing and real appreciation potential. The tiny home is cheaper to buy, but in most cases, you're paying the difference in lost value on the back end. So which one has better resale value in 2026? Here's my honest answer. If you're comparing a tiny home on wheels to a studio apartment you own as real estate, the studio apartment wins on resale value. It's not even close. The tiny home on wheels depreciates like a vehicle. The studio appreciates the real estate market. The financing limitations on tiny homes suppress sale prices and shrink your buyer pool. And the time it takes to sell a tiny home adds carrying costs that eat into your net return. But, and this is a real but, if you pair a 1-bedroom, tiny home with owned land, use it as an ADU, place it on a foundation in a zoning-compliant market, and build or buy to NOAA certified or RVA certified quality standards, the math changes significantly. In that scenario, you may be able to outperform a studio apartment on total ROI, especially because your entry cost is so much lower and your land is appreciating alongside the property. The tiny home is not inherently a bad financial decision, but it is a bad financial decision if you go in with the same expectations you'd have for traditional real estate, because the rules are different. The bottom line is this: know what you're buying. A tiny home on wheels is closer to buying a high-end RV than buying a house. Price it, insure it, and plan for its resale accordingly. A studio apartment you own is real estate, full stop, with all the appreciation potential, financing access, and liquidity that comes with that. If resale value is your primary concern, start with real estate fundamentals: location, land, zoning, and financing. Then decide which structure sits on top of that foundation. If you're already in a tiny home or seriously considering one, here are the 5 moves that research shows actually protect your resale value. Think of this as your resale protection checklist. 1. Buy or own the land. Land appreciates. The structure often does not. If you can own the land, you're not just buying a tiny home, you're building a real property asset. This is the single highest impact move for resale. 2. Keep the design neutral. Highly personal customization kills resale value. Unusual layouts, bold color palettes, And niche lifestyle features narrow your buyer pool. Build or design for the widest possible appeal, neutral colors, standard layouts, flexible spaces. 3. Use NOAA certified or RVA certified quality. NOAA stands for the National Organization of Alternative Housing. RVIA is the Recreational Vehicle Industry Association. These certifications are the tiny home world's equivalent of a building code stamp, and buyers pay more for homes that carry them. Documentation builds buyer confidence and speeds up sales. 4. Ensure zoning compliance before you buy. Zoning problems are one of the top resale killers for tiny homes. A home that cannot be legally parked or occupied on a lot is extremely hard to sell. Check zoning laws in your state before you commit. California, Texas, Florida, Colorado, and Oregon consistently offer the most flexibility. 5. Track and document all maintenance. Condition matters more than age for tiny home resale. A well-maintained 5-year-old tiny home often sells faster and for more money than a newer home with visible deferred maintenance. Keep records of everything: roof repairs, plumbing, electrical, and structural work. These 5 steps will not eliminate depreciation entirely, but they can dramatically reduce your losses and make your home one of the standout listings in a thin market. There you have it, a fully honest, data-backed breakdown of one-bedroom tiny home versus studio apartment resale value in 2026. The verdict is clear. For most buyers, a studio apartment as owned real estate wins on resale. But a tiny home with the right land, foundation, and strategy can still be a smart financial move. You just have to go in with eyes open. If you found this helpful, do me a favor and hit that thumbs up. It genuinely helps this channel reach more people who are trying to make smart housing decisions. And if you want to go deeper on this topic, I've got 2 videos you should watch next. One on how to find land for a tiny home that actually appreciates, and one on ADU laws by state in 2026, both linked on screen right now. Subscribe if you haven't already. I'm dropping new content every week on tiny homes, alternative housing, and the real numbers behind these decisions. I'll see you in the next one.